On January 9th, 2025, Ukrainian forces in Kursk Oblast encountered two unresponsive soldiers. As they approached with weapons raised, neither man reacted. Despite wearing Russian military gear, they remained silent when addressed in Ukrainian, Russian, or English. As Ukrainian forces conducted their search, one of the soldiers surrendered his weapons. First a grenade, then a combat knife. They spotted something else in his gear, a small red object tucked away in one of his pouches. Through gestures, they ordered him to show what he was concealing. With deliberate slowness, he reached into his pouch. The Ukrainian's fingers tightened on the triggers, anticipating the worst. Even at gunpoint, he refused to let it go. His strange behavior and stubborn silence would soon make sense. These were no ordinary Russian soldiers. The North Korean and Russian alliance. While the world condemned Russia's invasion of Ukraine, North Korea stood firm on its side. Backing Moscow long before the first shots were fired, Pyongyang recognized Crimea as Russian territory as early as 2017. Though the alliance was unofficial, it was never in doubt, and when war finally broke out and Russia launched its full-scale invasion, North Korea's support only deepened. Then came the weapons, as North Korea provided Russia with artillery shells, at first pulling from old stockpiles. Ukraine reported that nearly half of these rounds were defective, but Russia kept accepting the shipments. Over time, Pyongyang's factories ramped up production, turning out a whopping 2 million shells a year to fuel Russia's war machine. By fall 2024, the deal expanded. Russia took delivery of nearly 50 North Korean-made M1989 Koksan self-propelled howitzers and around 20 M1991 short-range missile systems. But that's not to say North Korea didn't get its share of the bargain. In return for its growing support, Russia helped ease Pyongyang's economic struggles, paying for the artillery shells with massive deliveries of rice, keeping North Korea's food crisis at bay. Intelligence reports even hinted that Russia was sharing space and missile technology, a move that could have long-term consequences far beyond the battlefield. But artillery shells and missile systems were just the beginning. In October 2024, intelligence reports stated that North Korean troops were on Russian soil, preparing for war. South Korean officials traced the first wave to Vladivostok, where 1,500 soldiers had arrived by Russian ships under strict secrecy. The men were given Russian uniforms, false identities, and new cover stories before being moved deeper into training camps, far away from prying eyes. That same month, NATO, monitoring movements along Russia's eastern borders, decided it finally had concrete evidence that North Korean forces had been integrated into Russia's military operations. Reports suggested that this was only the beginning. North Korea had committed 12,000 troops, including elite special forces, 500 officers, and 3 high-ranking generals. North Korean soldiers in Europe. In 2024, Ukraine pushed deeper into Russian territory, launching an incursion into Kursk Oblast that caught Moscow off guard. What was once thought to be an impenetrable border was now contested ground. Ukrainian forces seized approximately 1,250 square kilometers, dealing a direct blow to Russia's territorial control and exposing vulnerabilities that had long been masked by carefully planned Kremlin propaganda. After the initial shock, Moscow scrambled to respond. Labeling this move as a terrorist operation, Russia reinforced its defenses with additional troops and air support, determined to push back Ukraine's advance. But traditional reinforcements weren't enough. Russia needed manpower and speed. By November 2024, intelligence reports confirmed that 10,000 to 12,000 North Korean soldiers had arrived in Kursk Oblast. According to a New York Times report, the first clashes between Ukrainian and North Korean troops took place that same month. While early engagements were limited, Ukrainian forces quickly recognized something strange was happening in the war. At first, identifying them wasn't easy. Ukrainian Defense Minister Rustem Umerov later explained why, as the North Korean soldiers weren't just wearing Russian uniforms, they'd been deliberately disguised. Ukrainian sources claimed they'd been trained to pass as Buryats, an ethnic minority from Russia's Far East, making their detection nearly impossible on the battlefield. For weeks, their presence went mostly unnoticed, hidden in plain sight. But as the battles in Kursk intensified, one thing became undeniable. Their sheer combat tactics set them apart. According to reports, the North Koreans are fighting like they have nothing to lose. Their tactics were straight out of another era, reminiscent of the massive frontal assaults from Soviet times, with no regard for cover, strategy, or survival. Ukrainian soldiers described them as throwing themselves into battle, wave after wave, relying on sheer numbers to try and overwhelm the opposition. The way these men fight is also deeply ritualistic, almost fanatical. Reports emerged of North Korean troops removing their helmets and body armor before charging, as if shedding anything that might slow them down. Others were seen writing pledges of allegiance to Kim Jong-un before heading into battle. Most disturbing was their refusal to be taken alive. Ukrainian forces watched as some, when cornered, pulled grenades under their own chins rather than surrender. One Ukrainian soldier, speaking anonymously, described it best, quote, "They can just brazenly go into battle until they're neutralized. Despite all attempts to call them to surrender, they will continue to fight." Russia had no problem using them this way. Ukrainian intelligence paints a grim picture of these North Korean troops being sent straight into minefields, one after another, clearing the way for Russian forces. Others were marched through booby-trapped areas. Because of this, it's no surprise that casualties are staggering. However, by early January, there were no known captured prisoners of war. Not without my sausage. On January 11th, 2025, in a statement to the public, President Vladimir Zelensky revealed the latest developments from the Kursk region. 2 North Korean soldiers, though wounded, were captured and transported to Kyiv, where they were now being interrogated. According to a Ukrainian soldier named Pavlo, after engaging and neutralizing a group of advancing North Korean troops, a drone operator noticed unexpected movement on the ground. As the Ukrainian forces moved in, they found the soldier standing among the fallen, unresponsive to commands in Ukrainian, Russian, or English. With no way to communicate verbally, the soldiers resorted to gestures, trying to make sense of who they had just captured. When Ukrainian forces searched one of the captured men, they found a military identification card, a Russian-issued document that named him Antonin Ayasevich Arankio, a tailor from Tuva, born in 1998. While everything about it seemed routine at first glance, something didn't add up. The man remained silent, his expressions giving nothing away. The second prisoner carried no documents at all. Soon, Ukrainian intelligence realized the men were North Koreans. On January 21st, Ukrainian paratroopers shared new details about the capture of one of the 2 North Korean soldiers, an event that had taken a bizarre turn. In footage released by the 95th Air Assault Brigade, according to soldier Pavlo, quote, "He had a grenade and a knife on his body armor, which he showed he was dropping. In his pouches, there was something red we initially thought was a makeshift lighter. But when he took it out, it was a sausage. He was indicating it was for eating, and he wouldn't drop it. We let him keep it." Even at gunpoint, the prisoner refused to let go of his sausage clutched in his hand, and later, in a moment of distress, the captured soldier attempted self-harm during his extraction. Later, Pavlo recalled hearing over the radio that the prisoner had finally settled down. A meal and medical attention seemed to do the trick. Then came an even more unexpected request. The North Korean soldier requested his captors put on romance movies in Korean. Gone or training. The North Korean deployment to Kursk, which neither Pyongyang nor Moscow has officially acknowledged, was supposed to reinforce Russia's army and help expel Ukraine's troops. But nearly half a year later, Ukraine still holds significant swaths of territory. According to Ukrainian sources and South Korean intelligence estimates, North Korean losses from the initial November numbers are now only 25 to 30% of the original contingent. Ukrainian Special Forces units fighting in Kursk say they have not seen any North Koreans for around 3 weeks since mid-January. While many believe the troops may return after receiving reinforcements and additional training, a former North Korean soldier predicts that troops sent to Russia will try to escape from the start. Speaking to press, Hyun Sung Lee, who served in the Kim regime's army in the early 2000s, said most of these soldiers will be young and uncommitted to the war. Defections may start individually, but could grow into larger groups, including officers. Lee claims Russia treats them as expendable, using them as human shields and offering no respect as fellow soldiers. Once they understand their role in the hierarchy, many will try to flee. But that's not what their leader says. In a New Year's letter, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un hailed Putin and proudly stated 2025 would be the year, quote, when the Russian army and people defeat neo-Nazism and achieve a great victory.